Hi everyone! Welcome to episode 40 of the So Not Scary series. I hope you guys are doing well and that the new coronavirus outbreak has not affected your health too much. And I hope you guys are staying safe and well wherever you are around the world, okay? In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to start and stop sewing with your mini sewing machine. So I recently got a question from one of my lovely viewers who asked, how do I close the stitches or how do I finish sewing when I'm sewing with the mini sewing machine? Today I wanted to kind of shed some light on what options you have, because that is not the only way of finishing to sew with this mini sewing machine, okay? So when I first started sewing with this mini sewing machine, I would start sewing. I would sew a few, like 3 or 4 stitches, and then I would stop sewing, leaving the needle inside the cloth, and then manually swivel the project around, going back over those initial few stitches. And then I would stop again, manually swivel the project around again, and then continue to sew. And by doing so, essentially what I was trying to replicate is what big full-size sewing machines do. And that is that they have got a reverse stitch lever, which I've also talked about in great detail in this video. Like the name says, a reverse stitch lever allows your machine to kind of reverse the flow of stitches and go back over your stitches. And the idea is that in doing so, your stitches are going to get locked in place and not unravel, okay? Now, if you've got a full-size sewing machine, then it's no problem. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. But if you've got this mini sewing machine, what should you do? Is it worth doing what I used to do, which is manually going back over your stitches? Now, after having used this mini sewing machine over the past more than 3 months now, I've realized that actually what I was doing initially was inefficient. It wasn't wrong, but it's not the most efficient approach. And here's why. If you've got a small project, say for example, like a little something that you're sewing, sure, you might be able to swivel your project around and do it. But what if you want to sew something bigger? Maybe you're sewing garments, or maybe you're making some larger placemats or mug rugs. It's not easy to swivel large projects around because look at the space here. It's just a tiny space. Your garment or your cloth will not all fit into this little space here. And it's going to be incredibly difficult to control your sewing then when you're working through so much bulk underneath that little space, okay? Which is why now my preferred method of starting and stopping to sew is to just do simple straight stitches, no reverse stitches, and right at the very end, I knot the stitches by hand. One thing you have to keep in mind when you follow this method, however, is that you need to keep your thread tails long. So let me show you what the right way of doing this now is that I find is right. So if you look at my mini sewing machine, what I've done here is on the back, you will see the thread tails, okay? And can you see how long they are? They're like really like 6 or 7 inches long, easy. My top thread is black and there's white thread, so we can easily see what we're doing. And there's a reason why I've kept these strings long, and that's because they will then allow me to knot the thread easily once I finish sewing. So let's do that now. I've got here some yellow fabric. It's the same fabric that we used in this episode to sew Hogwarts Hufflepuff robes for my daughter's doll, okay? It's a lightweight poly cotton, and I'm just going to double it up and we're going to pretend that we're sewing. And I'm going to show you now what my preferred method of starting and stopping to sew with this mini sewing machine is. So step 1, like I said, keep your thread tails long, okay? By all means, pull some extra thread out from your bobbin as well as the top thread so that you've got enough thread to knot it easily, okay? Now I'm going to start sewing. I'm going to sew like a rectangle all around, okay? So here we go. Okay, so we've reached the end of our rectangle, and now I'm going to pull the project out like I've done in the past as well. And if you want to know how to pull it out properly, watch this video. Okay, so now the project is safely out. I've not yet snipped the threads. Okay, now you might be tempted to snip the project very close right here. Okay, but please don't do that. Okay, keep these thread tails long as well and snip it somewhere around here. So we've got long thread tails to work with. Okay, so these are really long. Now let me show you how we're going to lock these stitches. Okay, so here we are looking down upon our project. It's not the best kind of sewing, but this is just for demonstration purposes. And on the back you can see it's white thread. Okay, so the idea is now we want to secure the thread and lock the stitches. What do? So what you can do is get a nice fat needle like this one. Can you see the eye of the needle? It's really big. I hope you guys can see it. Okay, this needle will allow me to pass threads easily from one side onto the other side of the fabric. So you choose whichever way you want your threads to go. I'm going to pass the black thread over onto the white side. Okay, so I'm going to stick the needle in, and I'm going to pass both these top black threads over onto the back side. So I have to first pass them through the eye of the needle. So I'm going to snip them to equal length so it's easier to thread them together. There we go, they're both equal. Now the eye of the needle is really big, so I can actually stick both the threads in through the eye together. Okay, can you see them going through? I'm going to pass them through. Now remember not to pass all of this thread through. Okay, just a little bit should do, about 2 inches. Okay, and now I can pass them over onto the other side. Let's do it. There. Okay, there is no thread hanging on the black side. Okay, now let's look at the white side. There, all of our threads have now come over onto the white side. So now we should have 4 different tails, 2 whites and 2 blacks. And now we just have to knot them together. So what I like to do is clip them to equal lengths so it's easier to handle. I'm just going to separate them out and make a double knot. Now I read somewhere a while ago, I might be wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's called the surgeon's knot. Basically what you do is, you know how you do a simple single knot? First let's do that. So you cross it over, you pass the thread through, okay, and now instead of pulling the ends, pass it over one more time. Okay, and now when you pull on it, this knot is not going to unravel easily. Okay, so that's one single knot, and let's do one more to make it a double. Okay, and now your project is secure. Now what do we do with the tails? So we've got these long tails of thread. What do? You've got 2 options. One option is to just snip it close there. So if I take my pair of scissors, I could easily snip them there and I'll be done. If you want to take it one step further and make it even neater and more secure, this is what you can do. Pass these tails through the eye of the needle again, okay? If you've got like a needle threader, it's gonna make life so much more easier, but let's just try. Okay, all 4 of the tails of thread are now through the eye of the needle. Now this is what you can do to make your project really neat. You bury these threads in between the layers of your fabric. So I'm gonna poke it right back where we started and then pass the needle in between the 2 layers. Okay, so the needle is now between the 2 layers of the fabric, and now I can just stick the needle out anywhere, pass the threads through, and now the tails are buried in between the layers of the fabric. Now when I snip them off, now that I've snipped them off, the thread tails are well and truly buried and the project is really secure. Okay, can you see? There are no thread tails anywhere. So that is one way of securing your project, okay? But what would you do if you were just supposed to sew a straight line across the fabric and the beginning tails and the ending tails were not meeting up, which means you had to secure 2 sets of thread tails? It's the same process. Pass the thread on one side of the fabric over onto the other side, and then knot the 2 threads together and then snip them off, okay? And your project should be well and truly secure. So I hope now you know how to start and finish your projects on your mini sewing machine by manually and very easily tying a knot and burying the threads. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you found this video helpful, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye!